Tencent continues its viral growth into gaming.
And Biomutant finally receives a release date.
Hello, and welcome to Triangle Squared. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me is a whale of sorts.
Maybe so.
Saul Bridges,
bringing you guys lucky episode 199.
We are so ever close to that 200. Ooh, you know what? If you've been listening since even like the first 25 episodes and you're still here today, a little mini applause to you because...
Golf applause.
Yeah, golf clap. There you go. If you can't see that, I wonder if that, like, if we wouldn't have said golf clap, what does that sound like to people who only listen, which is the vast majority of you? I don't know. But today, we're going to get into some stuff, of course. We cold open, we teased the Biomutant release date, and of course, Tencent getting its little grubby claws into more and more in the gaming industry, which, you know, I've talked about my feelings on that enough. But hey, we'll do that some more today. But this show opens in a very specific way, and that way is a time-honored tradition of Saul. What have you done this week? What have you been up to? And I think there's a good chance that me and you have switched roles this week, but actually, the more I think about us talking, I think we both might have ended up being a you for the week.
A me?
Yeah, a you.
Hold on. For the past couple weeks, you've been the one not playing video games a lot.
I mean, I've been playing like singular games. But this is the first time that literally from a recording date to a recording date, my console has not been on besides to watch South Park.
That is unusual. So for this week, I played more Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm fairly far into that game now.
What part of the island?
Okay,
have you broken to the third part yet?
No,
okay.
I'm in the second part. I did the quest to get the Sakai clan armor, and I'm trying to think of, like, it's not taking a break from the story, but I've decided, like, it's going to be fun to go and just take out Mongol territories that I can.
Sure.
So I've just been kind of doing that.
Kind of doing the Far Cry thing of, like, I'm going to shirk all my responsibilities and just go clear outposts.
Why did you compare that to Far Cry? Because now I see it. I hate it.
Oh, yeah, dude. Ghost of Tsushima is basically
Assassin's Creed / Far Cry.
To me, it's a more of a perfected take on doing Far Cry in that genre than I think even Assassin's Creed has been recently, personally.
Damn you.
I don't do
but
that. Sorry.
I will say that's all I've played this week in terms of video games. That was on Tuesday. No, it wasn't. It was on Monday. It was on Monday. Because the rest of this week I have really just been having an itch to read. And if you follow us on Twitter over at twitter.com/trianglesqrd, you would have saw that I put out
type that in on your phone.
Yeah, type it on your phone.
Go to your web browser on your phone. Type that in. Then when it asks you if you want to switch to the app for convenience, you say no.
And then you stay mobile. But yeah, I've been having the itch to read, and so I put out a post on Twitter, and just to shout out a couple of you guys, because I asked everybody, what are some good books to recommend? And Matt Green came through, Dennis, aka Kevin Bacon Bits, came through, Shafe Dog, Stefan Swanland, Kurt Cheadle, and of course the legendary Chris Figgs. I said it right.
You did.
Blake Post, Josh Shoup with Liam. You guys all came to recommend me books. And I haven't had a chance to start any of those books at all because I was finishing up the third book I was reading this week when I posted that. And there's a couple of good stuff in there. Like there's some good recommendations in there that I'm going to read. Specifically the one from Chris. His sounded really cool. And the one that Josh recommended me. And they explained to me that it's a series, and it's called the Iron Tower Trilogy. And essentially what they were explaining to me is that it's a very heavy Tolkien styled or inspired book series. And what Liam says is, he said it's a good book. Author originally wrote a sequel to Lord of the Rings, but the LRTR folk said no one touches me precious. So the author basically rewrote the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but way better, and continued to write books based on that world. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That is a good idea. I think that's so weird about the way that goes too, because I guess I know that it ultimately comes down to them and it's their thing, but it's almost one of those things where it's like the love and hate thing, where I really appreciate that you give someone's work credit and you give ownership to them and let them have some kind of allowance on it. But at the same time, I think once something's been around long enough, I like the idea of things going public, or what do they even call it? To where a good example is like Disney have just completely altered copyright laws by continuing to push them and getting them rewritten to where they can continue to own Steamboat Willie where no one else can put it out. But either it finally did get given up, or they've gotten it's in legislation to potentially be pushed again, because they were nearing it again to where they were going to lose that to where anybody else could come and say, we're going to put Steamboat Willie on DVD and then sell it, and we can undercut Disney's price and make a lot of money.
There's an official term for that. It's called it's free real estate.
Free real estate?
It's free real estate.
But that's the thing about...
like Lord of the Rings is like that.
Well, and it's pretty old. The only thing that comes down to that to me is like, I feel at some point, someone who is just really inspired by that and happens to do something, why shouldn't they be able to come out with it and it just be kind of like they treat half of the Star Wars books these days, which are, it's just extended universe. This is someone's take on this story that we're going to consider not canon, but you can go and enjoy it and read it. And then you have as your own reader, right, you have the ability to say whether or not you want to consider that canon. And as long as something doesn't come out to knock that out of canon, technically, it can be in your own head canon.
Yeah, I think people just get too pretentious, I guess, about the canon and stories that they like, so that they want to protect it because
I get it.
They may make something they don't agree with or something like that.
And I think the reason is that you do get movies and stuff, and you get people who end up being fans in the long run. That actually looks way better than I would have imagined.
It does. I was like, I'm sitting over here watching Monster Hunter Rise, and that looks fun. It's like a grappling hook or some kind, and I was like, my eyes went like, whoa. Like, that looks pretty good.
But yeah, it's just one of those things where when I think like Lord of the Rings in particular, right? I think a lot of people became fans of Lord of the Rings when movies opened them up to it as kids, and then they went and read the books after that, and then they get really protective of it. And a good example of that is I know we have friends that are pretty protective of the idea. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Michael's pretty purist when it comes to the Tolkien lore, and I'm pretty sure he didn't like Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor.
No, he likes those games.
He didn't like the fact. It was one of our friends. It might not have been him. One of them was like, I don't really like that it has the ability to be canon. Because
that's me.
That's what I mean. I know you said it too, but I thought one of our other friends have said it.
No, that was it was me, and I
mean, you said it on the show.
Yeah,
in the past.
Maybe Blaze.
It might have been Blaze. I don't know. Blaze typically he downloaded Shadow of War the other day for the first time. I don't think he had a big problem with it. I don't know. I might be misremembering. I know that you've had problems.
Well, with I like.
It's like you like the game, but you don't like that they wanted to classify it as canon.
Yeah, and the only reason I don't like that is it doesn't circle back to what I just said about like being pretentious. It's just it opens up floodgates for stuff that you just don't really care to see or want to see or see directions that they go especially when it's tied directly into the main cast. The main cast of the books. And,
sure.
And that's kind of what they did with a major character from Lord of the Rings. And I'm not going to say which one, but they didn't rewrite him, but they changed something. And I don't like that. Star Wars could be cool because you could do it all in like these different universes and stuff like this. And you could have these Sith Lords that have no effect on the Skywalker story and kind of like they did with Darth Bane and stuff like that. And it still be considered canon, which it's not. But it would be cool if it was. Now, I think that when somebody makes a story, and I've said this before in the past too, outside forces other than the creator shouldn't be able to change that story. Now they could add on to it, sure. Like they could create like a lot of people do cool backstories for like especially book characters that don't have backstories at all, and sometimes they work out fine, and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, then you just shrug. You're like, well, it's whatever. But then if they try changing something about that story, you know, it's just like, well, you can take that creativity and make something yourself and base it in that. And that I wouldn't have an issue with that. And that sounds like what this story is. They took a story and they kind of made it their own.
Like a modern example of that, because I'm with you. I actually think that, like, okay, I assume the book that you were talking about that Liam gave example of like Tolkien House said no.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know what's in the book. or what was in the sequel book that he was doing. But, if it's just a sequel to the universe and less a sequel to the characters, then, or it becomes a thing where I think it's easier to be like, well, why does it matter? You can still consider it part of this world. You can still consider it part of the Middle Earth thing, and it's part of that universe, but it's touching on things in a sense that doesn't necessarily directly affect another character. It's kind of like how for a while the idea was like, well, if we ever make another Last of Us, it might be completely new characters.
Right.
Because it's like, well, that's fine, because all you're doing is you have a world that you've built that it has ample ability, much like Infamous, to just choose a character, put them in some place that we've not seen, and just watch their story unfold in that isolated area, and then kind of let it keep going. And you can sometimes see the effects of other things, like you can reference other games and stuff in there, as long as you don't take away from them, because I do think that's important. I think going back in to some degree and being like, oh, I'm going to write a book that's a prequel to The Lord of the Rings, but it's a sequel to The Hobbit, and it fits somewhere in the middle, which is but
it'd be cool.
Yeah, you can do that, but at the same time, you run the risk of having, if you're using characters, you run the risk of completely changing characters and being inconsistent with them, which you also run the risk of when you write a sequel with new characters. It's a good example of why people didn't like Sly 4. They felt like there were some character inconsistencies with Penelope, but a modern example of how you can do these things right, I actually like that, Pop. But a good example of how you can do things correct, in my opinion, is like Star Wars Rogue One. We've had this open, not necessarily a plot hole, but we had this question of like, how exactly did they have the exact thing they needed to know? Why is this here?
The plans
what is this? Why is there a big hole? Why do we know? And then you can come back later, way later, and say, let's write around that. Let's make a movie and let's write around trying to actually solve the question of, but how did that end up happening?
Incidentally, that's, I think, what started Metal Gear Solid 5. When you think about how they explain,
that's true.
Yeah, who that is, but
yeah,
and I don't. Problem is such a different word.
It is,
and a hard to use word in this situation, because I don't want to like seem like I'm gatekeeping, because I would never gatekeep something like that. I don't have a problem with it. When people decide to like change characters around and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I'm just gonna say this right now. I'm not embarrassed, but in high school I read Twilight books, all of them, and I thought they were pretty solid books, especially for that age group. And I would still say,
young adults,
go read those books. Or like if you have a young adult in your household that likes reading, Twilight is not honestly a bad book series. It's pretty good for that age group.
I've heard that from pretty much everyone who's read it. Like, they were like, the movies are cheesy because it visualizes it in a way that I've never heard anybody watch the movie and be like, that's what I imagined when reading the book.
Twilight, yeah, that is very true. Yeah, there are parts in those movies, because me and my wife watch them every now and then just for fun, because they are really fun movies
hilarious.
to watch. Yeah.
I was cracking up the entire time I watched the first one. We did an episode of it over midweek matinee.
Yeah.
I could not stop laughing.
And the movies are good in that stance, but we'll quickly get over this topic and get back on to gaming. But something cool that a lot of the fan base was saying around that time, and if you talk to somebody who liked that series, before the movies are coming out, it was always a rumor, and this happens with every big book series in the world. There's a rumor that, oh, did you hear that, I can't think of her name, the author was going...
Stephanie
Myers. Or Meyer.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And it's always hard because I think of Stephanie Rice, who is the vampire.
Yeah, the other one.
Interview with a Vampire. It's, Queen of the Damned and whatever. But yeah, other vampire stories.
But there was a rumor that they were going to make
another name?
Stephanie Rice is correct. It's Meyer that I think we're double checking. But it would be really cool to have a book feature out Edward, especially because like you could make an argument that that
has happened, right?
Well.
Yeah. There was a book that's like the first movie from Edward's perspective, or the first book from Edward's perspective.
That's what everybody thought was going to happen.
Well, and something came out that Jess was talking about.
It's the first book, but they're swapped. Edward is the pale human, and Bella's the vampire. Where we thought we were going to get a story about like this is how Edward lives his life, and a prequel to Edward's story.
Oh.
When here we are talking and gushing about Twilight. This is now like where Bella is the fine vampire mama, like from Resident Evil 8, and then there's Edward, who's like the normal human that they fall in love. So and stuff like that.
And Rice. I knew Rice. I was like, what am I thinking?
We just combined the names.
We did.
Yeah. But back off of Twilight and books, what have you been doing this week?
I don't know if I even mentioned it last week, but I'm remodeling my game room finally. I decided that I was going to try and do this all myself. I had a built-in bookcase from forever ago in my very old house. This house is built in 26. That bookcase was put in when this addition was put on. This used to be a porch and they covered it.
Right.
And that was in like the late 40s, early 50s. So that bookcase has been there since the 50s. And I decided to take it out, rebuild one to fit into the space that was there, and move everything off of my desk that I have. Nobody's really seen the game room, at least from the angle that I would see it at. The game room used to be our studio. It used to be what we recorded the video in.
Go back and look at like the first 40 videos, I think. And like
I'd say like the first 90 episodes.
Is it 90? I was gonna say up to 100, but like I couldn't remember if that sounded right. But go look at our backdrop because that's what we're talking about. The backdrop with the figures is what he has remodeled.
Yeah, so I've completely redone that, and the point of it was that to get some room back into my game room. It's not a very big room, nor is the studio, to be honest. I mean, they're big enough for what we do. That's nice. But I was trying to reorient it to where instead of it being kind of like it's almost like a big rectangle, so it's more long from the doorway entry than it is wide. So I'm trying to flip that to where I'm using the less distant side to kind of reorient it to where I'm sitting on a couch and can be against the wall and then see the TV. And I decided to completely change all that. I'm getting rid of my desk. I am getting couches in there, which I've never had in there. I am putting a coffee table in there, basically making it like a second living room. Right. Because this is basically my living area. This is where I spend most of my time. So I've decided to redo it, and I am very happy with how it's turned out. I did it all myself. Had to give myself a little pat on the back because, to be honest, I went into it thinking I'm going to try this on my own, put a couple $100s in it, and if I do okay on my own, then great. If I completely mess up, I can just pay somebody else to come and do it right. And I can safely say I don't have to pay anybody else. It's basically done. I posted a picture in the Discord. I've got to move a plug into the studio side of the building, and then I've got to finish the wall up with a trim that goes to where that plug is going to be covered. But other than that, today after we get done recording, it's moving everything out of there so I can turn my system on and play it. Because the only thing I've done so far is that for some reason LG's WebOS or whatever it's called doesn't have HBO Max yet, just like everything else didn't have HBO Max. There was Roku and some other smart platform that didn't have it. And so far, I have it on PlayStation 5. So I've been using the PlayStation 5 as a means to, while I'm doing construction, while the TV was still over there, watch South Park while I was doing construction. What was cool, and something I'm curious if a lot of people don't know, modern TVs for a long time now have had what's called HDMI control. And PlayStation supports HDMI control to the point where if I turn my TV on, it turns my PlayStation 5 on so long as I turned my TV off under the same HDMI that the PlayStation's on. So if I turn it on, HDMI 1 is my PS5, and I left it on that, it turns on, and it turns my PlayStation on. Further, you can actually control the PlayStation with a TV remote, so I didn't have to use my controller at all. I do it all from the remote. You can pause, forward, back, navigate the whole system with your TV remote. That has been a feature I have used since PS3.
Yeah.
On even cheap TVs at the time, probably the nicest TV I'd ever had back then was a 3D Vizio 32-inch that was like $450. And I've used that forever. PS3 has had the feature to turn your system on and use the remote for so long. So that was surprising to me because I was talking to Chris and Blake about it and complaining that Xbox doesn't have it because I always forget, like if I turn my Xbox on, it doesn't turn my TV on and switch it to that HDMI. If I go to my TV and hit the HDMI for Xbox One, it doesn't turn my system on. So it ends up being a thing where I forget because I'm so used to it and it annoys me. And Chris was like, I did not know this was a thing. And am I the only person that realized that this was a thing? I know that's not the case, but I have a question for the listenership and viewership. Do you even know what I'm talking about? And if so, have you used it? And if not, why? Use it. It's fantastic. If you use your PlayStation 5 as a media device at all, it's fantastic. But even just for gaming, coming in and just hitting the PlayStation button on my DualShock 5 and then going and grabbing a drink or something and then it turning my TV and everything on for me is wonderful.
I think if you don't have what you're talking about, I think Arc HDMI will do the same, won't it?
I don't know. Isn't Arc the one that bounces down to like your receivers that you can have like multiple things plugged into, like sound systems and different media?
I think that, but the way it works on mine, is that I have one 2.1 HDMI port on my TV. Not that I really need a second one, I don't guess, but that one is ARC, and I figured this out like 2 weeks ago, something like that, where like I grabbed my PlayStation 5 controller off the charger, and as I grabbed it, I was hitting the button to go ahead and just turn it on at the same time, and it turned my TV on. I'm like,
that shouldn't be ARC. Your TV supports smart HDMI.
Okay.
So does your system. So my assumption for certain people is that they're just so used to turning their TV on and system on at the same time that they don't realize it's there. Or, see, my PS5, it could have just been it moved my PS4 settings. I don't know. I didn't turn that setting on my PS4, on my PS5. It was automatically on. You can go turn it off if you really don't want it.
Yeah.
I think it's called HDMI control if you go into your settings.
You can, I did this yesterday, you can go into your settings on your PS5 and turn your mic to mute as default when the system is on.
Yes, I did know that.
Okay. I didn't know if you found out about that since the last time we talked about that.
The only game it catches me on is Destiny 2.
It's going to catch me on everything.
Been playing that.
It's going to catch me on everything.
Yeah, well,
I don't care if it's mic supported or not. If I be lenient with it on everything, I'm going to be lenient with it on the games where it doesn't matter. Or it does matter.
Yeah, it's true. You play much more online than I do, I think, as well. So, speaking
Not
of
lately.
which, I need to hop into Destiny 2 and see what's going on there.
When does the new season start?
I don't know. I saw that they were talking about it the other day, but we'll definitely see what comes from there. Anyway, yeah, I watched South Park and got done with that. I will post a picture to social media so everyone else can see it if you're interested. Probably will wait to post a picture to where I can do from the area that you can see where I'm sitting, and then from the sitting to you can see the wall and stuff. But I'm quite proud of myself. I think it looks really good. And honestly, I think it looks way more upper class than the rest of my house is the only problem I have with it. Like, not in a bad way, but I'm like, damn, I indirectly made one of the most back regions of my house that you don't get to unless you open a door, probably the nicest part of my whole house in a lot of ways. By the time I'm done with the couches and the ceramic top coffee table, it's going to look way nicer than the rest of the stuff I own.
Well, you could just do like a board and board up your kitchen and just have people come in through. This is now your front door. So have people come through and like, this is the whole house.
Reverse it.
It could be like a House of Leaves situation where
We're bringing back book talk, huh?
we are. In that story, there's a cat or a closet in the house that shouldn't be able to exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it's on the edge of the house, and it's like you open the door and there's space, but it's like that's against the wall that's on the outside. So that shouldn't. Like, it'd be like this closet right here existing when there's nothing on the outside wall. So
how do you know there is?
I've been in there. That's where our Christmas tree is.
Yeah. How do you know that's not the outside of the house?
Because I've stood right there on the opposite side of the wall.
You cut down a tree outside that wall.
I did.
I
if you saw our April Fool's joke video, you would have seen it.
Good times.
But yeah, then just explain that your whole house just doesn't exist. Oh, well, like there's the front porch. No, that doesn't exist. You just think it does.
Well,
on to the community.
Isn't that discarded? Isn't that you only exist if you think you exist, technically? Because if you stop thinking about your own existence, then you cease to have meaning to exist.
No, like what's more?
Am I oversimplifying Discarde, or however you say his name?
It's my favorite thing, and I was telling Brett this. I watched Tenet yesterday, and it actually brought up one of my favorite concepts to think about, and that's the grandfather paradox. Do you know what that is?
That's the one about when you go back in time and. I mean, am I wrong on that?
If you go back in time and kill your grandfather,
that you cease to exist?
We don't know.
Or do you cease to exist?
Yeah, it's like, can you go back in time and kill your grandfather? Because if you go back in time and kill your grandfather, you weren't alive to make the decision.
If time is linear, then yes, you can't. Yeah, you couldn't have existed to go back in time, which means the death could have never happened, so it suddenly cancels itself out.
Yeah, it's a true paradox.
Yeah. It is a true paradox. This is a games podcast, though, and I guess we'll go ahead and get into the community's take that
Everybody
we gave you last week.
The first 20 minutes of this, 30 minutes of this is always off topic for the slightest bit.
It really is. It normally ends up being game related because we normally play games, but this week has been so little.
That's why I'm just going to stop apologizing for that, because we'll make it
I'm not
shift.
Apologizing.
We'll just make it shift that way.
Yeah, we're just shifting back
just like
into
you can
games.
See my dirty feet. Yeah.
If you guys knew what Saul does with his feet under this tabletop.
You're giving people boners right now. I don't like it.
Oh, okay. The community's take this week was kind of based off what we talked about last week of companies doing things that suddenly kind of make you question them. This was kind of off the back of, give them backlash or whatever you want to call it. it was based off of Xbox kind of swiftly changing their price and then undoing that price change all within less than 24 hours. Realistically, like 12 hours. So, question was simple. Name one action that has happened or would happen that would make you give backlash to a gaming company you love. And Saul wanted to specify that you love because it means more when you suddenly are willing to give flack to a company that you do love. And I feel like that's something we try and do on this podcast. If we have a problem with PlayStation or really anybody, you just go, hey, why are you doing that? I like your product and I enjoy being able to use it, but at the same time, get your crap together. So I told that you can share an example from the past or something you hope doesn't happen in the future, just to further clarify. And we got some interesting ones. One of the ones I expected to see plenty of and just got a lot of I agrees to is Sony's new/old censorship policy.
Yeah.
And we've continued to talk about the censorship policy for quite some time. It's a problem, and I think that ultimately, in my opinion, I think it hurts PlayStation, and I think it hurts people who have grown accustomed to PlayStation being a place to play without that barrier. I always felt like when it happened, I didn't see the change that to me made sense to lead to this policy, and yet we're still here. I think the bigger complaint that I have about it is that Sony has never really been entirely upfront with it. Yeah. I think it's almost always been lurking and just shrouded in a heavy layer of BS and depends on the game and depends on the studio and what they're wanting to do and whether it's their game, whether it's someone else's game. If it's a game that's theirs that they know is going to do well regardless and the developer says, yeah, I want to do this, and they're like, okay, but if you're a little weird Japanese game that only sells 50,000 copies, which may be more than enough to recoup development costs, Sony's like, you can't have jiggly boobs.
There's no transparency on what they pick.
I feel like there's no consistency either. I think that's the big problem I have with it. The fact that you can see very graphic sex scenes in a lot of ways and uncomfortable moments throughout The Last of Us 2, but then you can't see a girl's boobs jiggle in scantily clad bikini in Dead or Alive. Honestly, it comes down to what's the difference in a lot of ways. It just, as long as the game, I understand some level of, hey, this isn't what it should be. But at the same time, I think the whole point about good stories is that good stories brush up on uncomfortable things all the time, like child rape and stuff like that. I mean, there's actually a whole point within, and in eating people too, but there's a whole point in the original The Last of Us where there's definitely the feeling that Ellie is going to have something unsavory happen to her in a certain spot. And that's uncomfortable, but that's what the game's trying to do. It's trying to be like, hey, in this crazy version of the world that doesn't have any kind of real, control over anything, people are just left to do what they want to do. I just find it weird. I think it ends up, more often than not, you gimp the potentials for story to use interesting real-world aspects in a way to make you further dive into what's going on in this world and sympathize with your characters. I guess that's the best way for me to say it. So, weird. Saul, you want to grab one off of Twitter?
Sure. Our good buddy, longtime good buddy, Sean One Neo, he says, I really don't like it when studios tries making a spiritual successor, but thinks it's okay just to with only just half of the content compared to the original. And then he lists off some examples. So we have Agents of Mayhem, which would obviously be a spiritual successor to Saints Row. Mm-hmm. EA Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, just like the original Star Wars Battlefront. Twisted Metal for the PS3. And then, of course, Dangerous Driving, which came from the guys at Burnout, which I didn't know existed or cared.
All right, Sean One Neo, I have one problem here with you.
He's going to hit you with Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal on PS3 is a fantastic
Told
game.
you.
You did. But it is a fantastic game. I understand that not every character had a story, but the stories that we got from the 3 were much more involved. And I would honestly prefer a more shallow number of stories that are more in depth than a bunch of mainly mediocre, meaningless stories. Every Twisted Metal game prior to this had a couple of really interesting stories, and then the rest were almost just there to give you a reason to keep playing the game, but you could still do that here. And also, Twisted Metal's multiplayer on PS3 was probably some of the best I've ever played. I love that game, and I'm so sad that it didn't do well. Sad story of a lot of games that came back for the first time on PS3. Sly 4 did not do well at all either. So,
over on Twitter as well, Dennis, aka Kevin Bacon Bits, he said,
another one of our patrons. You guys are so kind.
You all are. I can't speak today. Making a multiplayer game pay to win. Call of Duty has done it in the past when they had loot boxes where the best guns could be in them, making it so that only whales who could afford $1,000+ on a game get the best weapons and items is wrong in my opinion.
What is whales here?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm like. Money whales?
Dennis, help me out here. Is this a typo or is this a new thing I can throw out at people? I'm looking for new insults if I can. There's nothing like a good, interesting insult. If we can introduce whales into our area, I'll do so. I just need to know what I'm talking about here.
We can make narwhals. Another one on Twitter that I really wholeheartedly agree with is Irish Joe. He says drastically overpriced DLC. DLC that's not a big expansion. Something like, he says Skyrim and their $20 horse armor, but he means Oblivion. Yeah, Oblivion is infamous with their $20 horse armor. And then he says, or EA and most of their stuff, but definitely their Sims DLC.
Holy crap, dude.
They have like 60 different DLCs, and most of them are the same price as the game.
It is insanity.
I did not know that.
And the crazy thing about it is that Maxis, I think, was the original developer of that. I think has since been closed down. They might have reopened them or left a very small thing. But, you know, they kind of killed that developer off. Maxis, yes. Let me see if they are defunct as I thought or what they chose to do. But they severely gimped them, and I don't think that they're actually doing anything anymore besides kind of like supporting the game. Their Emeryville studio was closed in 2015 of March, moving the other one over. So they severely have kind of hit that. But I think it's one of those things where I don't know why, but Sims didn't perform as they anticipated for some reason. So they're kind of doing the Rock Band thing where it's like, we're going to give you new content, but it's all going to be a little more expensive than it should.
Yeah.
And that's cool because it's like, well, I still like the game and I want to support it. And if I keep buying this DLC to have more fun with the game, maybe they'll come back around to making another game sooner. But I feel like it's such a weirdly, almost predatory take on the idea that I find it odd. It's just but I noticed that too because I have a lot of friends who really like Sims 4, and I was going through and looking at a lot of the Sims 4 DLC, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is $60 DLC. Like, dude, like The Witcher Blood and Wine is like 20 to 30 hours of gameplay for like $20.
Yeah.
And it's like a full-on story. I find it so weird. Like, I'll give, like, for as much as Oblivion hit with $20 horse armor, which was so dumb, and then even
in a time that it was like, that was
unheard of.
Yeah, that you didn't do that back then.
And then following up with a pretty, and this is weird because it actually adversely affected Xbox users with the first DLC expansion being the Knights of the
Nine. No, what is that called? It wasn't Knights of Nine. It was something of the Nine. Was it Knights of the Nine?
I think it might have been.
Yeah,
Knights of the Nine.
It doesn't sound right.
Knights of the Nine.
Okay, that doesn't sound right at all. That was
a
dumb expansion.
It was really short. It didn't add anything to the game. It was all taking place in the same place you'd already been. It did give you new armor, but it was so quick. And it was included free on the PS3 version of the game.
There was a hefty requirement for that armor, too, and that's that you couldn't have ever committed a crime.
And you had, if you did commit a crime, you had to go walk the pilgrimage again.
And pray to all, like, 11 shrines.
But the cool thing is that they followed it up with one of the best DLCs I think that's ever been in a game, personally, with Shivering Isles. So you get into this point where Shivering Isles was a fantastic value. It was a new world, quite a bit of new story content, seeing things that you hadn't seen, meeting Sheogorath. All that was really cool. That's his name, right?
Yeah, Sheogorath.
Yeah.
Just like, and his voice actor, too.
Yeah.
Was so well done.
Yeah. So, and then I also think that they did a really good job with pricing things better on Skyrim, with like Hearthstone being, I think, $10 max and being very Minecraft inspired. And I like that because you can tell the game wasn't built with that in mind. It was more of like Minecraft's hitting, this is really cool. We could go back and work this in. Well, but the more normal DLC like Dragonborn and Dawnguard, I think were both $20 or $30, and I think that's a reasonable price for a decent expansion.
I think that they learned, and they had a very kind of a short package DLC, and that was Heart Home, and I keep wanting to say Hearthstone.
I said Hearthstone.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
And that's kind of like Knights of the Nine, and then they had Dragonborn. And then Dawnguard, and those were both very expansive. Dragonborn...
Hearthfire was what it's called, by the way.
Was it?
Yeah.
Fire?
Hearthfire.
Oh, I thought it was Home.
You could adopt kids and stuff.
And make your own
I've
homes.
never played. I've never done it.
I never have either.
I've never played any of the Skyrim DLC.
But
Funny.
Speaking of games that are or things in gaming that are overpriced with little content, Dylan Kirby hits us with Ground Zeroes, which I personally love. But
Saul, do you want to tell the story
no,
about?
no, we're not gonna tell that story. Maybe on one day.
I need you to.
Maybe
though.
on our 200. If we do that stream we're talking about where we get like eat pizza and play Bloodborne or something on 200.
We will.
and live
That's
stream,
next week.
I'll tell the story.
Listen, you guys need to hear this story. It's fantastic.
But yeah, if that game was $10, here's how I think they should have handled Ground Zeroes. It should have been $9.99, and you should have got it for free if you pre-order the game. I think those two instances would have been perfect because you could beat it in about 5 hours.
You can beat it quicker than that.
And can you?
You don't remember that I was sick one day? I woke up finally and was still feeling bad at like 3 o'clock, and I had it beaten by 5 o'clock. Took like 2 hours.
Well,
now I didn't beat every single thing, but I did a couple of side things. And
I think every single
main
thing's
quest.
like 10 hours total for everything. But I think that they could have definitely released that into
2 hours. Yeah.
into better. Goodness gracious! Yeah, I only played that game once just because of the nature of it. No, I played it twice. It's just been a long time because I played it once originally on Xbox, and then I want to say PS Plus. It was free 1 month, and it was right around the time that Metal Gear Solid 5 was coming out.
Yeah.
The last response over on Twitter is our good buddy Jehudi. He says, "I hope BioWare doesn't shut down due to drastic mistakes in developing the new Dragon Age or Mass Effect. I can't understand a company that does not build on its past achievements and pivots away so hard, and they are not recognizable anymore."
You know what's weird about this is I know that Jehudi enjoys Anthem, and so did I. And it's weird that probably the thing I've liked from them the most in the last few years is the thing that's quite a bit different from them. But it doesn't help when it was plagued with issues too. I think if Anthem came out, depending on how Anthem 2.0 comes, right, or Anthem Next, whatever they're calling it, depending on what it comes out as, you get to this idea of like if Anthem would have launched in this exact state, still being quite a bit different for this developer, I think it could have worked for them. But because Andromeda was a disappointment, and then Anthem launched as a very different game for them, as well as being considerably broken depending on who you are. You could get lucky and not have very many problems. But I think that's the big thing about them right now is it's just a series of weird events. I think that Mass Effect 3 was a weird drop for them, but most people at least still enjoyed that game. And then they had a strong comeback with a lot of people really loving Inquisition. And then Andromeda. It's like a roller coaster
I didn't
with
think
BioWare.
Inquisition was good. I love 2.
Oh, you're one of the weird fans in regards to most people who like Dragon Age did not like 2.
What?
Yeah. 2 was considered like the bastard child because it was a completely different game. It was all real-time action, very fast-paced, not very RPG heavy.
Okay, I must be thinking of Dragon Age 1 then. What was the Awakening?
Origins. Awakening. Awakening was like a DLC or re-release or something. That's Dragon Age Origins, the first game.
Hold on. It's Awakening is what I'm thinking of. I just thought Dragon
Age Origins Awakening. It's an expansion, and if you bought the game with whatever version that was, it had the Awakening DLC in it.
So this is 1.
Yes.
Okay, then I am thinking of 1.
And Inquisition is much more like 1 than 2 was.
I did not like Inquisition.
2 was bad.
I got Inquisition for I think like $3.99 or something. I got it for a stupid low price on sale.
I didn't like it either.
It's been like it's been like a year ago.
It looks fantastic on PC.
No, I thought about selling on PlayStation. I'm like, no, it doesn't.
No, it looks fantastic on PC, but I still didn't care for the game.
Yeah, I mean, one day maybe like when I'm really really bored and I want to go back, but I knew something was automatically stupid about this game when I hit download and I was seeing armor sets downloading with the game.
Yeah,
and I was like, I don't know what this is.
That's a fairly common thing these days, though, to be honest. As unfortunate as that is, but at least it comes with the game and you don't have to buy them. It still feels odd, but it's better than having to be like, hey, buy these little things that were already released with the game.
It's stuff like that it's like, this stuff could have been in the game. Yeah. But this is content that they scaled.
That's when it's bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull one off of Facebook, and then I'm going to pull at least one more off of Discord.
Before you pull off one off of Facebook, I'm going to pull a quick one off of Discord, just because it's very similar to what we just talked about. And that is our good buddy Sean. And he says, I was pretty annoyed with Konami. Well, it was really down to Kojima when they changed Snake's voice actor from David Hayter to Kiefer Sutherland. And of course, for those that don't know, they did that in Ground Zeroes and then, of course, 5. He says his iconic voice was lost to just sound like Jack Bauer, and it was one of the first of many letdowns I had with Metal Gear Solid 5. Yeah, you're right. I didn't care. Okay, like this is it. I didn't care that they changed his voice because at least it still sounded okay. If it would have sounded bad, I would have cared. But I don't care about it as much as I did after realizing why. It still doesn't exactly make sense.
Well, because they've still had the character that you play as be voiced by David Hayter in the past. That's
no.
Okay, technically,
there's two things. There's one thing.
Ground Zeroes and 5 together. There's a couple of things going on here.
Well, there is a theory that Ground Zeroes never happened, and it was all a hallucination by Psycho Mantis, which that's wild and crazy. But his voice was the same in Ground Zeroes, which would have been Big Boss.
That's where the inconsistency comes to me.
And there is Big Boss in the very beginning of the game as well.
Yes.
Who helps you. And that is also the same voice. So I don't...
That's the inconsistency. That's what I mean. I don't like that.
Yeah, so for
if
me...
you wanted to run it off as to the actual 5 thing, then fine.
Yeah, now if it was all Venom Snake the entire time, then I have no issue with it. Not even a single bit. But also, there are times that I have issues with David Hayter. And I think that every now and then people like him, or the way he acts sometimes, he deserves a little bit of just desserts, just nothing like that, because that's rough.
I think, if I'm being honest, and it might be kind of getting at the point of what he's doing too, I think the problem here is that I like Kojima, clearly, but as we've seen from Kojima here lately, starting with Ground Zeroes, is it seemed like Kojima's thing started being that he... And again, this is perception, not so much the truth. I think it's easy to perceive that suddenly he only wanted to be working with big time actors, and it became this thing of like, that's why when I go to do Death Stranding, I'm going to have Guillermo del Toro, who's not a big actor, but he's big in film. And it started to be like, oh, I'm above, easy to perceive, I'm above all these video game actors. I'm going to start trying to get Kiefer Sutherland, who's a real actor. I'm going to get... Norman Reedus, and I want to get Mads Mikkelsen, and don't get me wrong,
Troy Baker.
All of that is great. Troy Baker, I think, is the one interesting example, but he's also gotten to a point where I think he's like, him and Nolan North are like almost the epitome of video game voice actors, where if you're going to work with a video game voice actor, at least let it be one of those two.
No.
If you're worried about star power.
They shouldn't care about star power.
I know.
Care about
I know, but Kojima right now, from everything he's doing, it's easy to imagine him being somewhat taken by the idea of star power because he wants to feel like he's working on, and I think it's because he wants to transitions in the movies eventually. I actually would just, at this point, I just want to see Kojima just say, I'm making a movie.
Well, he's always cared heavily about cinema from the get-go. That's why Snake is based off of who he's based off of.
Yeah, which is even more fun. Snake Plissken.
Yeah. What's the actor's name, though?
Kurt Russell.
Yeah, Kurt Russell. And it's clear that he's always wanted to, or he always has taken Easter eggs from these games and put them, and injected stuff from movies into them.
Yep.
So I think that him getting to work with that is just, specifically with him as the weird voice actor. It's like they could have done him as the bad guy and kept David Hayter.
Oh yeah, but again, I think he saw an opportunity, and I'm not saying this as anything bad, but I think that he knew what he was wanting, and I do think that there's some of Metal Gear Solid 5's development problems did come down to specifically Kojima and what he wanted to do. Now, of course, Konami didn't help any of that.
I often wonder if it's like you could definitely relate to this, and I'm not going to say why or what, but when, like, let's say you've been working with a company for X amount of years, and then the company does something that annoys you. It's just like, well, they're going to get my bare minimum kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would bet that Kojima had that kind of mentality going on with it.
Wouldn't surprise me,
because that's how almost everybody is. Like anybody who's ever worked with someone in partner or even in a professional relationship like that, if they get the brute end of things and it's just like, oh, so this is how this really is, you're just like, well, they're going to get my 10%.
Yeah. But to finish up that, I think that the only thing is that I think Kojima was in a unique position where every Metal Gear Solid title seemed to push him further and further into the public limelight for the gaming community, that he had an opportunity he saw with 5 to be like, I can probably push and actually get, gaming is growing, the budget for this game is going to be bigger, I can probably push and get big time actors on this, and I'm going to take that opportunity. Yeah, you're right. Every now and then David Hayter can seem, I don't want to say childish, but he can seem like he's entitled.
Smug.
Smug and entitled. And that's unfortunate. I still think that whenever I think of Snake, when you've been doing this for so long, Snake is David Hayter to me.
I mean, you're
from a
not
voice
wrong.
perspective, and that's just one of those things. Like, you can shake things up. I even talked about how at the end of Final Fantasy VII, I shouldn't say this. I'm not going to say this.
Yeah, don't spoil that.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a voice actor change from a character that I love that when it happened, I said, no, I don't like this.
You could do. You can get him to cameo you for only $75.
Yeah, you can. But we're going to move off into one from Facebook real quick. Thank you guys for sending these in. I thought this one was just going to be a fun one because it's, a lot of times we don't get people complaining too often about things. This is fun because this is like a requested complaint. Like, I want to hear you complain about something.
I love hearing people complain about something like this. That's why I love these as community takes.
Josh Farmier says, or Farmier, I don't know how you say your name, buddy. Sorry. He says all companies deserve backlash if they screw up, but in the end, I believe the people that will say, quote, I'm never buying a blank again are liars. Everyone makes mistakes, and yes, while CDPR screwed up once, they are fixing it right away. The only other time a company got me a little riled was Microsoft buying Bethesda. I'm a big fan of Elder Scrolls and Fallout. I have a feeling they won't make those games exclusive, though. They would be really stupid if they did. That's a very common sentiment, and I think it's depends on where you land. As a gamer who feels like there is such a big market and that Skyrim sold more than I think Skyrim sold more copies than a single one of either the PlayStation 3 or 360 sold.
Yeah,
but when you start looking at that, it's like clearly there's a big market, so it would be dumb for potential for the game itself on a strict dollar amount for them to go exclusive with it when we know it's had a big multi-platform success and the expectation of multi-platform. But on the other hand, as a business, it would be dumb to an extent, depending on what you're viewing. It would be dumb for what we know Microsoft is trying to do, which is trying to bolster Game Pass with very high-quality games that they are doing in-house so they're not having to pay any kind of a fee. So if you think about that, those titles going exclusive actually makes the most business sense to what Microsoft's doing. But if you're also on the other hand and you're looking at Microsoft putting that kind of $7 billion investment into something, you stop and go, well, if they put it on as many systems as possible, they pay off or they get a return of investment much sooner. So it's a multi-layered thing. I think there's a mix, though. Going back to your first thing of people who say, I'm never buying a blank again are liars, I think sometimes that's true. I think that a lot of people speak bold statements like that quickly, and they go, I'm never buying a PlayStation again because of their censorship. Or I'm never buying an Xbox again because of the Red Ring of Death. Clearly, there are people who have went and bought more PlayStation stuff or continued to support PlayStation in some way or fashion. Clearly, there are people who ended up getting an Xbox One, even if it was eventually a One X or an Xbox Series X. It happens eventually for a lot of people. But I think it's one of those things where liars is just such a strong word because you're technically right. Saying you're never going to buy something again is a heavy statement.
It is. That's why, and this is how I say this 99% of the time when we talk about voting with wallets. And I said this, I think, last episode or the episode before the last episode because I wasn't on that one, where I said it's always smart to vote with your wallets. And I always say this kind of way, too, is like, it just may not be the time to support them right now. And one of my in real life personal experiences with this is with Google. I love Google. I love their ecosystem. I love everything about their ecosystem. But I had a bad experience with their phone. So, and I've always said for the time, like I won't buy a Google Pixel phone until they do something better with these phones because I had a problem with mine that plagued an entire user base. And they went from, oh, well, we're just going to go ahead and fix these for warranty because this is a problem to, no, use your phone in safe mode for 2 weeks and uninstall all the apps. And it's like, I bought this phone out of pocket at launch for like $1,200 or whatever it costed.
$800.
From the 2XL was $800?
$799.
Are you sure?
Almost positive. If not, it was $899. But
I remember it being a pretty penny.
The thing that comes down is that you're thinking back to that, and you're so used to phones throughout these last 2.5 years being $1,000.
Yeah, that might be what it was. And I bought it directly from the Google store, and it's fixed. It has this problem that all these phones have, and it won't get fixed. But they could come out with a new phone, and I will. $749. Wait, no.
If you got the bigger gigabyte version, it was $849.
Yeah, it was $849. No, it was $949 if you got the bigger one.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. Oh,
I didn't get the
Pixel
949
2.
one, though.
You got the 849. That's what it was.
Yeah,
so it was,
I got the 849
with tax, $900.
But here's the thing: just because I have a bad experience with the company doesn't necessarily mean I'll swear off of that product entirely. What'll happen is, and I just did this with Samsung, where I will be more lenient to them in the future, and then I'll give them a second chance. And if they fail that second chance, then they're done. I will never in my life own a Samsung phone again because of the last experience I had with Note 9. There are certain restaurants and places around here and out and broad where I refuse to go back to just because of something that happened. And I will keep those refuses, like unless I am with a group of people.
Well, it's a person by person basis too.
What do you mean?
I mean, like some people will say what they mean and then legit mean it. I mean, you're also pretty young, so by the time you're 90, you could have a complete turn of how you feel about
and that's
Applebee's, for example.
No, I won't.
I mean, it seems unlikely, but my point
I
being
won't.
is that technically speaking, the opportunity exists. But I know that you go into it meaning it more than some people. Like I think the big examples of it's like the worst of what he's talking about are people that trade a game in and say, Cyberpunk's going to be a huge example of this, I feel like. I think a lot of people will be like, I'm not buying Cyberpunk ever again. I'm not supporting CD Projekt Red ever again.
And then they'll buy it when the new patch comes out.
And then 8 months from now, whenever or whatever it ends up being, when the next gen version comes out and it's getting rave reviews and all the bugs are gone, if that does happen, they'll be the first in line to go get it.
I'm already criticizing them for that taking that long to get the patch out.
The next gen version?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're focused on getting the last gen versions, I think right now, if they
should have been a last gen version, and they should have been.
I agree with that.
Launch.
I agree with that as well. But I mean, right now, if you only have so many resources, what do you do between the two?
Not launch a game in broken state.
And then they could try and pay someone else to handle the next gen version, like they're doing with The Witcher 3, because Saber Interactive is handling The Witcher 3 for next gen.
I'm excited for that too.
Yeah, they're the same people that handle it for Switch.
They did a good job on Switch. Yeah. The fact that game can run out of handheld and run smoothly, it may not look the prettiest, but it can run smoothly.
The audio sounds terrible, but you do so much audio that you have to compress.
I think it got fixed.
I hope so.
I think I remember reading that. Not that I'd ever played on a Switch, because
because all you'd have to do is have it to where the game updates with the non-compressed audio, like where on the cartridge it's compressed. But then it updates because that's what it is. You're dealing with heavy compression because there's so much dialogue. Big thing. Audio takes up a lot of room. Just like we were talking about video, right? Video takes up plenty of room too, and that's why these pre-rendered cutscenes and a lot of things end up having compression artifacts. And the darker the scene is, the more you're going to see that compression because you see those crushed blacks.
Yeah.
It's rough times. Rough times. I'm going to grab one more from, and actually this is a great example. I was just talking about this the other day. Or talking about this, not the other day, earlier. Rude Days 93, one of our patrons, he says, has to be another red ring of death for Xbox. If something like that were to happen again for the company in this day and age of social media, I don't think they'd be able to recover. So I find that interesting that you kind of viewed it more from, in the age of social media, you don't think they'd recover. I guess, Rude Days, if you clarify whenever you get a chance to hear this, I'd love to hear if this is something that you personally think, like I would be very upset with this, and less what are the impact of it? Because I think you're right. I think if they had another red ring of death to that degree, it'd be very hard to recover. I think at that point they probably would stop being a console manufacturer, and I think they would switch almost immediately to their platform of where Game Pass goes on everything, and they just go ahead and Xbox becomes less of a platform and more of a service, which we're already seeing it kind of happen. But would you personally be very strong about your opinions towards Xbox if that were to happen? Just out of curiosity. But thank you guys to everyone who said anything on here. And just to kind of throw it in there, Shave Dog also mentioned Red Ring of Death was a complete disaster. So these are good examples. I'm surprised that a lot of people came down to more current gen things.
Yeah,
I was interested to see if anybody was going to dig deep back and be like, you know what, I really hated when the Sega Dreamcast didn't have this, or they did this. Pretty interesting. Also, Shave Dog mentioned the PS3 because of the fact that, and this is right, whenever they showed it and then whenever it released, there were a lot of things that they were originally going to do that were missing. There were originally multiple HDMI ports. There were way more USB ports. And it was interesting. Launch models of PS3 kept probably the most of this, where the flip up was a card reader like mine in there, and you had 4 USB ports.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff got cut.
The one with the card reader was the one with the backwards compatibility, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it has a card reader, actually, you know what?
Did they make a rendition without the card reader? And
I think the 80 gig non-backwards compatible one still had the card reader, but that was it.
it didn't have the USB
But
ports.
I don't think it had 4 USB ports.
It had 2.
That sounds right.
Okay, that's all I'm trying to think. Because there's technically 4 PS3s. There's that one. There's the original backwards compatibility one. There's the slim, the super slim. But
There's more than that. The original body style of PlayStation 3 had a lot of renditions.
did it? I thought it only had 2.
No, it had a lot. They had a lot of things they had to cut. Some of them went like partial. Okay, there was full backwards compatible for some PS3s where they had the entire PS2 chip. Then the first thing that they did was try to cut some of the hardware, where it had some of it, but then it relied on software emulation to do the rest, and those had more backwards compatibility issues, if I'm remembering correctly. And then they had one where they completely got rid of PS2 stuff, and then the only way you could play PS2 games was ones that were reworked with the PS3 Classics thing, where they were essentially rebuilding the game to run on PS3 code, or kind of.
Yeah.
It was an interesting time period. It's more interesting to me that the PS Classics have stayed around. PS2 Classics. We got PS2 Classics on PS4.
Yeah, because I downloaded Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
Trophy support is cool, though.
Speaking of trophy support in that game, I for those that don't know, on PS5, you can now see what I think is a rough estimate of how many hours you played in games from PS4.
Yeah.
Do you know why I think it's rough? Because apparently I've played 70 hours of WWE 2K16. I've never owned that game. I've never played that game. I don't know where that came from.
I don't know either.
I don't understand. And I was going through.
I went through my list, and mine seemed pretty accurate.
Mine seemed, for the most part, pretty accurate, except for Dark Souls 3. It said I only had 116 hours. And I'm like, I know for sure that's wrong, because on one of my PvP players, it was 8 hours or something on just one of those.
Yeah.
And that was later. That was after Saul plays and stuff. So there's no way. But it had WWE 2K16 in there for an absurd amount of time spent on it. But the other one was Monster Hunter. I don't think I played Monster Hunter World for 1,000 hours, and it said I did. I don't think I played that game that much.
I could see that I had. Even though I finally did calm down. We played that game.
It was 900 something hours played. And I was like, what?
The other problem that comes down, and this happens on Vita as well, a lot of games will be set up to where if you put your system in sleep mode, they're coded wrong to where it'll count sleep mode time.
I always kept sleep mode at an hour, though. So I didn't shut down that thing 1,000 times. Or I'd say 1,000. I'd say I played that game for 300 hours.
You only keep your system up. If you go into sleep mode, it's in sleep mode. You can keep power to
USB
for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but if it'll count there's a Gundam game on Vita that if you put your Vita in sleep mode, and as long as it doesn't die, it just counts all that time. So there was a guy who had 30,000 hours or something.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty interesting. Actually, I think one of our, I don't know if he still listens to the show. I haven't talked to him in a while. I can't think of his name right now.
Oh, dear.
He was the one who it took forever for him to come to get the Monster Hunter World Platinum because he kept trying to get that last crown. I can't believe I can't think of his name right now.
Why did you do this to me?
But you know who I'm talking about now.
I could see his avatar and everything.
Me too. It's going to bother me if I can't go find it.
And we deleted the Monster Hunter World thing out of there. It was because there's always users that their names weren't similar, but for some reason their avatars would confuse me, or I would get confused at what user I was talking to or what person I was talking to based on their avatar. That's why I got No Fate and somebody else mixed up all the time, and I don't know why. Their avatars are wildly different, and I would still mix them up.
Shiro Kumo? Is that right?
No,
Shirokumo?
Yeah, Shiriko.
Shiriko, but he put Mo at the end now. He's updated his name. Shiriko, yeah. He was one of them that had, I think, 3,000 hours on his because he would play it at work.
He had to find a baby or something like that.
Well, I was talking about on his Vita for that Gundam game.
Oh.
But he also did have, I think it took him 1,000 hours to platinum.
Yeah.
Oh. Rough times. Anyway, we're going to get into our sponsorship for this episode. You know, Mr. Sheriff Narwhallington here, this man has got smooth huevos. And if you don't know what huevos is, it's technically eggs. But you know what?
I don't know why he said huevos.
Because that's the slang term for your testicles. And you know what? If you want balls that are also as smooth as eggs, even though I guess it can never be, right? Everybody's got wrinkly balls unless you take a nice shower, the skin loosens up.
Your balls are wrinkly?
I mean, yeah, dude. Hey, you know when it's like mildly cold outside and you feel like, oh, my balls are tight today.
No, mine just sit there like a leather sack.
Do you think I was talking about this? I was, of course, guest on a podcast that my buddy does, the guy I do music with, and I was thinking it'd be funny if you could age people like a tree by counting the number of wrinkles in their balls. Like every year you'd gain a wrinkle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you know that you can take care of those wrinkles if you use Manscaped's ball toner?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You know what Manscaped needs to do to come out with? They need to come out with Botox for balls to smooth those babies right over.
No, they should not. No,
that's clearly a joke.
Should not.
Could you imagine though? Could you imagine just having a smooth? That would look actually terrifying.
Look like an avocado.
Avocados are still a little textured,
but it would be a smooth avocado if you use the Lawnmower 3.0 from Manscaped and a bevy of accessories to go along with it. We've talked about it before, but the ball deodorant and the ball toner, those are my favorites. Their cologne,
wearing the underwear right
pretty
now,
good.
Very comfortable.
I'm a big fan of their underwear and their shirt.
I feel like I've said that the last few times that I've recorded. This is actually accidental. I didn't intend to wear these today, and yet here I am.
I'm very, I'm not OCD, but I'm very, I want to say, this is going to sound mean. I promise it's not mean. And I promise it's not, no, I'm not going to say it. I am very particular about my wardrobe. So I typically wear the same stuff on any given day. Like if it's Monday, I wear this plus jeans. Tuesday, this plus my work pants.
Where you even if you don't necessarily intend to, it's almost like it's
Saturday. Like this gray shirt here is one of my podcast shirts, but I have another one of these that's this same exact style of shirt that's newer. That is my going out shirt for Saturdays. So I am very particular about this kind of stuff. And the Manscaped shirt, when I have it. My wife also stole my office shirt the other day. But when I have it, that is my Sunday night chillin' shirt.
Okay, I wonder what your meanness is there. I'm assuming there was something you were going to say about my dressing habits, which I don't care.
I'll just type it out in here. But why don't you go on with it? Let the boys in chat know what they'll get with our package.
With our package?
To take care of theirs.
Take care of theirs? Yes, you can get 20% off of your first order as well as free shipping. If you head over to manscaped.com and put code SQRD in, and I want to see what mean thing Saul has to say about me.
After the ad read.
After the ad read. So remember, manscaped.com, code SQRD, 20% off of your order as well as free shipping. And remember, they don't just have the lawnmower. You can take care of that ear and nose hair with the Weed Whacker. Remember, it's in this nice bag right here, all rechargeable, has a light on the ball trimmer, so you can sit there and trim your balls. It's also waterproof.
If the power goes out, you're covered.
Yeah, you can take a shower in your power being out, I guess, as long as you still have hot water. Or maybe you like cold showers. You can still see your balls with the light, and you can still trim them bad boys.
Waterproofing is something that you just underestimate how great it is that when you come to the cleanup.
Saul didn't have anything mean to say about me. Thank you.
I told you it wasn't about me. It was about myself.
That's okay, though.
But you can use discount code SQRD at checkout on manscaped.com, and it'll save you 20% and get you that free shipping.
One more time, just to annoy you. I'm kidding.
Yeah, one more time. It's going to be discount code SQRD.
Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring the show, and thank you guys for supporting us through that. We
didn't. Can we announce that what we can announce?
I mean, the sponsorship was renewed. I mean,
yeah.
I'll go ahead and say that. I don't care. Thank you guys. The only reason the sponsorship gets renewed is because you guys are supporting yourselves and your own packages as well as supporting the show, which is that's the dream team. That you're coming together, you're doing the thing right there.
The thangy thing.
For your thingy thing. But we're going to get into...
I was going to say, thanks to Manscaped and their sponsorship, they're practically paying for our pizzas when we do live streams now.
Hey.
So it's a win-win.
We're going to do that for next week, unless some kind of crazy internet accident happens here. But we can do this. And actually, if I can do it right and my game room's done, we can chill in the nice area and move the camera at an angle.
Yeah, that would be dope.
That would be dope. We'll have to figure that out.
We could do a full Let's Play of Bloodborne, because that actually does not take me long at all. And that is fully consistent.
There we go. All right, we're going to head into the news. In the news this week, I feel like there's not a lot, but that's okay. First things first is PS Plus, I think, continues to hit. We kind of knew this, at least one of these games was coming, but for February, which you can get those games starting Tuesday, users can expect Destruction All-Stars, which we, of course, got way more gameplay for as well alongside this announcement. So go check it out. See if it looks like it's up your alley. Of course, it's free. Try it. I'd say anytime that there's a game, even if I don't think I'm gonna like it, if it's free on PS Plus, it's hitting my library.
I'm super excited for Destruction All Stars.
It looks really good. I'm also excited for it. I'm glad that that's something I can hop into starting next week. That was, again, the original PS5 launch title that got pushed back and announced to be a PS Plus day one. So good to see them doing that, and it didn't get pushed back again. The controversial Control Ultimate Edition you get for both PS4 and PS5, which is good. The only thing that's weird about this, I find, is that there was so much controversy over having to pay for it, not having to pay for it, and then for it to land here, it's more of a curiosity. I'm not making any actual presumptions or statements here, but there is a curiosity. Did some of the controversy lead Sony to offering them up? Like, hey, we know there was controversy about the game. What if we give you this much money and you put it on our service day one? Or do you think this is... I would love to see how PS Plus deals are made behind. Like, is it possible that the people over at... oh, good Lord. Why can't I think of the name of that developer right now? Starts with an R, Remedy. There we go.
Oh, I didn't realize that's the one you were talking about.
Yeah, is it possible that the developers, Remedy, behind that game went to PlayStation and were like, hey, would you be interested in this game being a PS Plus thing? I'd have to assume it's probably Sony, but why did Sony go after them? You know, was it more like, hey, we saw that there was some controversy and we can clean that up by having it be a PS Plus game, which will make some people happy. Then again, makes other people mad because it's been on sale a lot lately. So people have just bought it for $20. They're not going to be able to get it for free.
Yeah,
there's never an end. That's the problem with digital purchasing, is that you're always going to find something happening to where you're going to either miss out on a better deal, you're going to miss out on you're going to buy, and then it's going to end up being free 2 weeks later.
Was that game scary?
I mean, creepy stuff to a degree, but more just, I'd say less creepy, more mystery, thriller aspects.
Cool.
You never played Control at all, right?
No.
This game, I hope, and even the PS4 game might, they do say that this runs on a much newer version of their Northlight engine.
Yeah.
So your PS4 save can't go up because it's a different version of the engine, which is fine. They could have, of course, spent time trying to make that work out, but I actually agree with them on this. They're a small developer. They really are. And it's like, do you want us to spend more of our time making the PS5 version just transfer your save, or do you want more time spending in making sure that it runs well and looks a lot better as a PS5 upgrade? And realistically, yeah, I want you to just... I can still play the PS4 version. If you're not going to make it that much better than the PS4 version, I'll just play the PS4 version on PS5.
Yeah, yeah.
So at that degree, I think I do think you'll enjoy it. I know that you like Metroidvanias, and this is very much a 3D Metroidvania.
Okay.
And I think it does have an interesting story. It raises some questions. Depending on how deep you look, I think you can kind of figure some of them out. But it's also just a very stylistic game, in the sense where I feel like it has such an undeniable sense of style that it just sticks with you. So
interesting.
That's really cool. I'm really glad to see that. So that's there, and then it rounds off with the PS4. I consider it a kind of a sleeper exclusive, Concrete Genie. Very good. I'm absolutely love that game. I think. Did you ever play Epic Mickey, the original?
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, I did. It's one of the only Wii games I've actually played.
Yeah, it's been
and
a long
I love that
time.
game. This has got some Epic Mickey / Kingdom Hearts moments that come. I won't say out of nowhere, but it surprised me because like you see the game and then you play it and you're like, okay, this is kind of what I expected, and then suddenly,
well, thanks for ruining that surprise for me.
I've already said it. I guess you just didn't. You must have forgotten.
Maybe so.
That's why I didn't think.
That's how my
anything of
brain
it.
works. If I hear like a story plot or something, I try my hardest to further myself from it.
I don't really think it's story so much as it's gameplay.
Oh well, if that's the case.
It's more of a gameplay spoiler.
Cool. Well, I don't care about gameplay spoilers that much.
Yeah, but
Unless it's like God of War.
okay, yeah, fair.
But that's also a story spoiler.
That is true.
Hey, speaking of Bloodborne for the stream, if we get that going, let's do it Saturday, like mid-morning. Like order pizza for lunch, if that's possible.
I think so.
But you know how I always said that there is a chalice dungeon you can go into, and you just get 80k blood echoes for standing there. Kotaku made a post about
The
it.
cum dungeon?
It's the same one. It's CUMMMFPK. That's the same one. And I was like, why did they...
Oh, is that like its seed code?
Yeah, like you type in CUMMMFPK. And I was like, why would you make a video about that? Like, why now of all times? And call it a cum dungeon.
Headlines.
This dungeon's so old. And then now, just now, they made a
They're
video
acting
about
like
it.
it's new.
Well, it's just like, yeah, it's like it has been found. I'm like, no, this dungeon's at least a year old.
That's what's cool about what do they call it?
Chalice dungeon?
Randomly generated, like procedurally
seeds?
generated content.
Yeah.
Is that seeds always become like, if you find a world you really like in Minecraft and like at least as a starting point, you can always enter that seed and then get it again. The reason I think I love that is because it brings back that feeling of like when you'd write something down, which of course you can type it in,
Yeah.
but it urges you to get away from the game for a second and be like, that was really good. What was that seed? Or, oh, I really like this world. What was that seed number?
Or if you play Minecraft and it's cool to go look at different seeds to try for worlds that you haven't had yet.
Yes.
And just type on those in.
And just open, like, I like the way this is set up.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
One of the coolest seeds I ever used in Minecraft, this was back on the 360, was a floating mountain biome. And it was essentially just like these really big mountains that were just in the sky in one part of the world. I'm like, this is so cool.
Yeah. See, I like stuff like that, and it's a cool way to bring back. I feel like it creates conversation within the community in a way that's different.
Yeah,
All of the Soulsborne community is all about helping each other, but having a specific sect that's like, what's the best way to min-max the Chalice dungeons? That's a cool new way, and it brings people to suddenly hop back in and say, you have the people who are like early days,
right?
Who are like, oh, I just tried this sword or this weapon with this skill dump, and this comes together as a good build. That's something you can expect, but eventually you run out of those. You get to a point where there's an understood thing of builds, but you get to a point eventually too, or you don't get to a point nearly as quickly, I should say, from Bloodborne or any kind of procedurally generated content that lets you have a seed, where you can suddenly be like, I've been playing Bloodborne for 4 years. I just got this random seed, and it's perfect. Here it is.
And what's really cool about that is like there are weapons like the Chikagi, which you can only get
in Chalice dungeons.
No, like you have to go all the way through Forsaken Castle, Canehurst, which is like the end boss of that is ridiculously far into the game.
Yeah,
and or it's meant to be, but. If you could beat him, you can then access that weapon in the messenger bath as you buy it with the badge, and you can literally get the Chikagi right after you beat Bloodstarved Beast, but because of a Chalice dungeon.
Oh yeah, so because you can just skip.
Yeah, you get a super. That's why I said this is a for sure. Like unlike the full plays we did last time, where it's kind of more questionable. That was more of a speed run. This can easily be done in like 3 hours or less, and it takes there is no guesswork. It is 100% like the game done.
Yeah,
with how easy it is,
which is nice. I mean, and I'm assuming that that's a specific seed.
Yeah, because you use that seed to get the Chikagi, and then you use the cum seed to get the Chalice that you just sit there and like you literally take 4 steps out, and then you just use a whatever a homeward bone is in Bloodborne. I can't think of what it's called right now, and you just go back to the lamp.
Yeah, nice.
You just do that over and over and over again.
Okay,
that's why I said the platinum for you is going to be ridiculously easy if you ever decide to go for it now.
Yeah, because the only thing I have that's not related to that is having to get the other endings and get the last chunk for upgrade weapon.
The Queen.
Oh yeah, well I know the Queen's in there, but I mean like take away from the Chalice dungeons. The only non-Chalice dungeon thing that I'm aware of is getting the last.
The 2 endings and then the Blood Rock.
The Blood Rock that you have to go through those stupid frenzy things.
Mm-hmm.
God, I hate that area. I tried like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, nah, I don't care.
even like. I could play that game and up until that point never die. I will almost always certainly die at least once. Because especially with the Chikage, it is really easy to make just a simple mistake. And if they frenzy you and then grab you, it's instant death.
Oh, you're done.
Yeah, no matter your HP.
God, I hated that. All right, next thing up on the list. Despite being a divisive game amongst the internet spheres, The Last of Us Part 2 was viewed differently from the gaming media and seemingly the player base as well, having now received more Game of the Year awards than any other title in history, with 169 of them coming from media outlets, with another 92 from Reader's Choice Awards, for a whopping total of 261, which edges out the first game's 254, which was originally the highest number of Game of the Year awards, if I'm not mistaken, for a long time at least. And it brings the series total to over 500, which is crazy.
That is crazy. For just 2 games.
It's one of those things where, for me, I think this is one of those moments where, regardless of how you feel about the game, because I know the game continues to be divisive even amongst the actual player base. There are people who are like, and I say divisive in the sense of, I feel like there's better conversation versions of the divisiveness where people are like, I played the game. This aspect is good. This aspect is good. This aspect just felt wrong. It felt like they rushed it, or like this could have been done better, or switching this perspective was done at the wrong time, blah, blah, blah. And you have these number of conversations where it's still people who are divisive about it, but not quite in the vitriolic way that you see on the internet spheres.
Yeah.
For the most part, or at least like the core internet stuff, like the visible parts of Twitter. Like, I see pretty good conversations about the game, even with people who said they didn't like it, in some of these very small Facebook groups that I'm in for gaming. And I kind of like seeing those because it feels like there's always still somebody who's crazy, but for the most part, it's here's what I liked about the game, here's what I didn't like about the game. And even if it's someone being like, I personally find that Naughty Dog completely dropped the ball here, it's like, okay, well, you're coming from a reasonable standpoint. Kind of like Nakey Jakey. You know, it's like he's giving his...
Did you watch that?
Yeah, I did. Very, very good video.
He said
even if I don't agree with everything he said.
Yeah, and he said everything that I essentially have an issue with in that game in such a better way than what I did originally. But yeah, like what's crazy is this game shares a lot of the same critiques and rabid fan base enemies as The Last Jedi did.
Yeah.
But I feel like...
Fair point.
I feel like at least The Last Jedi had more to criticize in terms of like the stuff in it. I have one main issue with The Last of Us 2. One big issue.
And I think we all know it.
And we all know
if we've played it.
If you've played it. And that is simply just in the timing of this issue.
I do agree with...
Actually,
I do agree that you can move it and it could work differently.
I do have two big issues realistically. One is the one I just said. Two is it has to do with the ending of the game, but that's neither here nor there. Whereas with like The Last Jedi, I'm not one of those people who's like, this is a terrible movie, but like,
I think it was clearly the worst of the three.
Yeah.
And that's saying something when
it's still a fun movie to watch.
It is. It's okay. It's fine. And there's some cool scenes. But at the same time, I think that it's one of those things where I think it was actually made worse. This is probably going to sound crazy to people who really hated it before this. I actually think The Last Jedi was made worse by Rise of Skywalker, because Rise of Skywalker just was like also not great,
not a good movie,
but it was still just like you said, it was fun. But it ended up being a problem where it's like the first and the third movie connect, and then the second movie is like we did everything we could to make it to where it's like that almost didn't happen.
It's like in the Rise of Skywalker, Rey throws her lightsaber and Spirit Luke catches it. And he's like, you should never throw one of these. Obviously throwing shade at the fact that he just tried to throw it off a cliff in the second movie.
Such a weird way of happening.
My favorite thing is the Holdo maneuver. When in the Rise of Skywalker, they're like, we'll just do a Holdo maneuver. And he's like, no, you're an idiot. That has a no % chance of working, which is obviously what they did in the Last Jedi. They use hyperspace as a weapon. Anyways.
I'm telling you, man.
We just need to rebrand the podcast as like a video game and movie cultural podcast.
Well, my thing is like, let's transition to the game because I was about to anyway. Could you imagine a gaming trilogy where midway through the same director was on the first one and the third one, and then randomly the second one was just a different director who wanted to do something so drastically different and did.
Devil May Cry.
It's actually, well, wasn't Devil May Cry 2 and 1 the same director?
No, 3 and 1 were. If I'm not mistaken, 3 and 1 were.
I think,
and 2 was not.
Hold on.
That's why 2 is so different. But also, people say 2 is bad. 2 is not great.
2 is just like The Last Jedi. It's a decent game,
but 2 is bad. It's not Dante because it's now known that he's the oldest incarnation of Dante at that point in this series.
Oh, God, I hate laptop keyboards.
They all suck. But yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Brett's fact checking me there.
I'm checking because I'm curious too. Hideaki Itsuno was Devil May Cry 2's designer. Devil May Cry 1 designer was Hideki Kamiya and Shinji Mikami. Actually, I knew Shinji Mikami was too.
And I knew Hideki Kamiya was because that's guy behind... and
then let's look up Devil May Cry 3 real quick.
Guy behind... what is that game series called?
Hideki Itsuno. Yeah, so 1 and 3 was the same director. And Shinji Mikami was part of 1 because it was originally going to be a Resident Evil game.
Yeah. I forgot. Didn't Shinji also work on Evil Within?
Yeah, it was Shinji's
the creator of
the head of Tango Gameworks, yes.
That's what I thought.
Or Softworks, what's their name? Gameworks?
What is Hideki behind? It's Platinum, right? He's the guy that calls people ants or whatever on Twitter. Or if you speak to him in English, he'll block you.
Yeah,
it's a game. Yeah. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
But he's Platinum, right? Am I mistaken in that? Okay.
Yeah, he's Platinum.
So he's behind Bayonetta.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was having a meltdown right there, not thinking of who that was. Anyways.
Speaking of weird Platinum things, it's still game related, even though it's not PlayStation related. Did you see that Nintendo now has full ownership of Astral Chain?
Yes.
And that Platinum Games apparently either released or sold or something their partial ownership of that.
You know, I'm setting up my Switch today because
That's a great game. I actually would not mind replaying.
I actually thought about replaying it because I love that game. And the soundtrack's so good. But on to Biomutant.
On to Biomutant. The long revealed and just as long waited, clearly at this point, release of Biomutant finally has an end in sight, with the game receiving a May 25th, 2021 release date. It'd be so funny if it was like 2022. But May 25th, 2021, that was announced over on the game's official Twitter. You can head over there and check it out, but I'll tell you, it's not much. It's just a image of the game, the date, and then it specifies PC, PS4, and Xbox One. And it doesn't go into detail on anything more than that. So I'm assuming that we're not getting next-gen console versions. I kind of expected that. It's a AA game. But what I'm curious about is whether the game is going to benefit from enhanced backwards compatibility, similar to what we saw with Cyberpunk, which does not have a dedicated next-gen version, but clearly was a lot better to play on next-gen. So, like, does this game run at 30 frames per second on PS4, but on PS5 it runs at 60?
I hope it has that, just because of how late into the year it's revealed to release. Now, if it was back at like March or February, I could get on board with 30 frames per second on PS5. But just being that late, I feel like that kind of is just too far. Almost a year into the PS5 lifespan, I don't think anything like that should run, especially a AA game running 30
a year into the PS5 lifespan at
almost.
May is not even almost.
We're 6 months in.
I mean, yeah, it's half a year.
Well, almost a year, ain't it?
Sure. The I guess technically 6 months and 1 day is, I mean, well, not really. 7 months and 1 day is your over half point. Halfway through 6, I suppose, is technically.
It would be 6 months and a day, wouldn't it? That's over halfway.
No.
Where do you get 7?
Well, I guess 6 full months. You're right. Yeah, you're right. My bad.
I'm so confused.
You'd be in the 7th month. Don't listen to me. I'm stupid. Clearly.
Hey, speaking of games, about next-gen updates, The Division 2 actually surprised me.
Yeah, The Division 2 is finally getting its next-gen updates, following up on a couple of other. I still find it crazy that Warframe of them all was the only one available basically at launch. I mean, it was a little bit out, but not by much. I think it was like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They were really close. So, yeah, we've got next-gen update for Division 2 hitting 4K and 60 frames per second, which is nice. Alongside its Resident Evil crossover for apparel that they announced at the Resident Evil Showcase, and some rebalances for other parts of the game that hits Tuesday if you were still playing that game. A lot of people bought that game when it was like, was it $1.99 or $2.99 for like a couple months?
And then they got...
So, yeah, if you bought that game, and I think it went on sale again recently for chump change, so where if you just want to play it in a better version, the game's not bad. If you got it for $3 and you can play it at 4K 60, it's fun. It's a fun time, even if it's just something you play with friends.
I always made the joke that I downloaded this game, but I never... Or I bought this game, but I never downloaded it.
I bought this game for $60.
I did, too, and I never downloaded it.
Shouldn't have.
You know what? For this, 4K 60, your boy might jump in. That might be kind of pretty just to look at.
Yeah, the game does look good. I don't feel like it's...
The first one looked
good.
Looks
good, yeah.
Especially, there's something just cool about walking down New York in the snow like that.
Dude, I actually think the first game was more technically impressive. Maybe it was just because of where it was at, but it was cool. And seeing Ryan be so excited whenever we were playing it with him, being like, hey, guys, like, come here. Okay, now walk in the snow for a second. Let the snowflakes hit you. Now walk under this thing. And then you start to see it melt on your shoulder as you go inside. That was cool.
It was. That was a fun game. I just wish it was better.
For it to be as the type of game it was, it reminded me of like when you played Uncharted 1 and you walked in the water and then you got out and you're like, only my pants are wet. This is amazing.
Fun fact about that. When I got my PS3, my first one, or actually I only ever owned one.
Yeah, you only owned the super slim.
Yeah.
But you got Uncharted 3.
Yes. And I went and I did not take it home immediately. I took it to Casey's house and I was showing him Uncharted. And there's a part in Uncharted 3 at the very beginning where you get wet. And you could jump out, and it's just like your clothes are like sitting there soaking. And he's like, oh my god.
Yeah, the sand tech is really good in that game too. It's like the snow tech in 2 was really good. I liked
2 was good.
something that was cool about games during the PS3 time when there was a lot of new tech is that you would like make your game and you'd be like, okay, we know we want the game to be, we know we want the story to be, but we're going to try and find a way to work it into this environment. Or even it's like maybe the story was influenced by it. You'd be like, we want to make a game where we can develop some really cool sand tech. So we're going to make a game, if we can, have a story that would tie him into a reason as to why he needs to be in the desert. Okay, cool, we'll do that. And then we can show off the sand tech in this game. In 2, which was the third game, in 2 it's like, oh, okay, we're going to have a story. We want to try and introduce snow to switch it up from the jungle environment so much. So let's see what we can do to show off snow tech. Oh, we'll make a Tibetan, you can be in Tibet. Tibet's full of snow.
You know what?
It's cool. I like that.
What I like about that series is that how almost every single one uses a different centerpiece for each one. So like the first one is jungle, the second one is snow, the third one is deserty. But what does the fourth one use? Anything?
See, the thing about the fourth one is that the fourth one's a good game. I don't really have any major problems with it at all. But the fourth game feels the most homogenized, I should say.
Yeah.
Like, it's really pretty. And since the tech jump is so big, seeing a jungle environment like that, because you're in Madagascar.
Right.
So seeing the jungle environment, like, if I was going to say anything, the thing that they didn't do in the other games that was really beautiful was underwater.
They could have, yeah.
The game was gorgeous when you'd go diving underwater. It was pretty cool. So I appreciated that.
Man, Uncharted 4 could have done a cool underwater thing and harkened back to what they normally do, which I'm not going to spoil, and had like Cthulhu underwater.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things that people didn't like about 4.2 is that it actually got rid of that.
What?
It got, yeah, it's oh, I forget. Yeah. They wanted the game to feel more grounded. But that was always one of the fun parts of the Uncharted games leading up.
Yes, it was. I can't tell you how bad I crap my pants towards the end of Uncharted on the, what's that boat called in Uncharted 1?
Oh, it's a U-ship. It's a U-boat. It's a German U-boat.
Can't think of what it's called. But just, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, that was really cool. I always thought that was fine. It's kind of like when you watch Indiana Jones. You see alien skulls, even in the fourth one, which wasn't that good to a lot of people. It still worked. We'll see. I also want to see how that Indiana Jones game comes out. Just because at that point, it is what it is. Let's see. Next thing up, while collector's editions have been shown off early from games that didn't come until much later, sometimes even being fully announced where you can pre-order, looking at you, Biomutant, the leak of the Dying Light 2 collector's edition might suggest that the title is not far from announcement and that the game hasn't suffered too greatly from some of the shakeups that they've had. The collector's edition comes with a limited statue, a UV flashlight steelbook, art book, and the minutia of stickers and maps that some people love, some people hate. I feel like that's just where it is. You either like that it comes with all that dumb stuff, or you're like, I only wanted the statue and the steelbook. Why am I paying for all these stickers and maps?
Dude, give me a high quality map. I want like a canvas map.
That was what was cool about the Skyrim one. Is there like a straight? I still have it.
It's cloth though, isn't it?
No, it's like canvas.
It wasn't. I had it. I just can't remember what it is.
Now,
what else?
If you pre-ordered it from GameStop, you got a cloth map.
Wait, was it Dark Souls 2 that came with a cloth map too?
I think The Witcher 3 came with a cloth map, which was actually still cool.
I didn't have that.
I like cloth maps. I like them. That's a cool idea. But having a like actual thick canvas map that feels like a real map, it's like, oh, this is dope.
Yeah, it did. Because remember, I got this one night we were at GameStop for like $40.
Yeah, for the PC version?
No, it was PS3.
Was it PS3?
Yeah, they had one PS3 one left because we thought they had them all at the top, and I was like, oh, that's all PC. But in like the middle, there was a PS3 one.
Yeah, you're right. You are right. So there goes all that, and it comes in with a price of €210, which is about $250 for US. This is, of course, not yet confirmed by Techland, but if you can go check this out, it looks fairly legitimate. There's full-on imagery. The only thing that might not be accurate is price, but considering what's there, wouldn't surprise me. I feel like collector's editions are getting very expensive lately. Next thing up, Balan Wonderland, or Balin, I don't actually know how you pronounce that. The Square Enix title from Nights into Dreams creator and Team Sonic co-creator Naoto Oshima has a demo out now for all to play before the game hits on March 26th. So if you've never played one of those games, want to go see what this is like, it's inspired similar to that. Haven't played it yet, but I've heard people talk about it, and it seems like what I would have expected. I'm curious if I would like that in this modern age, because I do, of course, like Sonic, and I did like Nights into Dreams when I was young. And also, I don't know if you noticed this, Chows are like an evolution of Nights into Dreams had a system with these like little angel cherub things, and you could, if you really wanted to, you can mess with them in game and get them to do different things and like multiply, and there'd be different layers of what they could do.
Yeah.
And then they kind of made that into chows once they did Sonic Adventure. It was like, well, we're just going to kind of create chows and go off of that. And it was an evolution of the same thing. I can't remember what they called the tech, but it was just about having a system that had a bunch of different variations depending on how you interacted with them, which is a cool idea. There was a point in time in games where it was like, how can we make this more, what would you even call that? Where it's like systemic almost, where it's like you're going to have a bunch of different variables that you can come in and you can interact with the game in a way that's completely separate from the normal gameplay routine.
What is that?
They have a name for it, and I can't remember what they called it, but it's an interesting idea. If you have any interest in it, there's a cool video. I can't remember the name of the YouTuber, but just look up Nights into Dreams and then Chows, and it'll kind of show you how the two worked and how they expanded the idea in some ways with Chows and how they also took the idea down a little bit with Chows. It was pretty interesting seeing how the Sega Saturn was able to handle that stuff. But next up, while we're talking about Sonic's voice actor of over 10 years, Roger Craig Smith, has stepped down from the character. It's currently unclear as to why. We don't know if it was kind of pushed by Sega, if it was started by him and that he wanted to step down. It seems like it's potentially more on Sega, as he kind of put a tweet on Twitter with a little heartbreak thing. So who knows? It's where we are, I think, with a new Sonic happening this year, or should be with the 30th anniversary hitting. They may be going with a new Sonic to freshen things up, or I don't think that this would be the case, but there's some idea out there that they might be trying to return Sonic to being silent, because the game they do this year is going to be more of a throwback to the Genesis era. And of course, Sonic Mania has been big, but I don't know. I find it weird either way. Now, I'm also going to say this. Roger Craig Smith has been fine. He's what he is, but because of I call them nostalgia headphones, which is when you get so used to a voice actor that you hate when they change. I was talking about that earlier. It gets to the point where it doesn't really matter to me. The most time I've spent with Sonic and just really enjoyed and been super enamored with was always Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. So Ryan Drummond, who was the voice actor that time period, even though he wasn't perfect, is who I view Sonic as. But I get Roger Craig Smith. He's done plenty for the series, and a lot of people like him. So, unfortunate. Last thing we have to talk about here, though. Tencent continues its crawl into all things gaming, securing investments in Don't Nod, the developer behind Life is Strange, Remember Me, and Vampire, as well as the new game that I can't remember the name of. It's an Xbox exclusive.
Vampire Masquerade?
Nope. It's already come out.
The newest one?
Hold on, I'll tell you. Tell Me Why is the name of the game.
Oh no, I wouldn't have known that.
New game. It's already come out, already been out. It was a Game Pass hit late 2020. Anyway, that developer. So they put into them, and then also Mundfish. And if you don't know Mundfish, I don't blame you. But just to give you a heads up, they're the developer behind the game that everyone's been wanting, the Soviet Russia Bioshock, as we've been calling it, Atomic Heart. So you may remember it from that. There's probably more, because honestly, the thing about it is I feel like every week Tencent invests into some gaming company, and it makes me so uncomfortable. Because it makes me think of like at that point in time where Disney was just buying everything.
It's a weird monopoly. And like, it's not...
I know they're not full owners.
Right.
But still.
And it's not inherently bad, especially currently for us. But in a monopoly like world, it could very well end up being like that. And that's the only thing I'm more curious about, is I'm just curious to see what this is going to end up being.
Yeah, because I think the thing for me is that it means that like true 100% pure indie titles that you see from people who do this on their own, kind of like Stardew Valley, where it's a guy who just creates a game all on his own, or two people who come together with nothing else and just release a game. I think that kind of indie is going to be the last frontier of people just really making what they want to make without any kind of outside influence. The problem that comes down is that Tencent as an investor still have the ability to come in and say, we don't like that. We want this game to release in China, and we want to be able to work this out, so let's not do that in this game. And even if you don't actually have that from them, I think you'll run into the thing that I think a lot of Sony developers do now, with Sony's very unclear and inconsistent Brain's failing me.
Yeah, every time your brain fails, mine does too. Censorship policy.
Yeah, the censorship policy is that you end up creating in a way where you try to create to avoid being hit by it. So if a creator has an idea and then they come and go, oh, I really want to do that, but then they stop and go, oh man, there's a chance that our investor wouldn't like that. Let's just not do it. Now, the thing is, you never know. Hopefully these developers are all looking at this and trying to talk and be like, hey, we still want to maintain control and not have that fear. And I hope that's the way it's going. But it's hard not to see it and kind of go, what does this mean? Why is there so much interest in that? And also the reason that I think it's a big thing is that regardless of what anyone says, Tencent is directly funded by the Chinese government because the way that China ends up working around with what it's doing, they actually directly go into these things, and that means that in a lot of ways the Chinese government particularly is what's pushing this. And I just find that so weird because it's not something that you typically see in other countries. You don't see the government push so much. Like there are examples, like the Canadian, and not necessarily the government, but there were like Canadian funds and taxes and whatnot that were poured into like Fez. You remember Fez?
Yeah.
And
Who made that game?
The guy was always remembered for being a butthole.
That's exactly why.
And
he was almost the.
I'm trying to remember his name because it's a great. There was a great indie development documentary on YouTube for a while that showed it off. Phil Fish. That was the guy's name.
I can't stand that guy. At least based off his past.
But yeah, and then I think is it Rhode Island or who is it? It's some state that was almost entirely behind by the way that it ended up working because of like the failures and bankruptcy and stuff of this game. That Kingdoms of Amalur's developer ended up going under. And it was like the game was almost entirely funded by the state that it was in.
Yeah, I can't remember who that is now because I think we've looked it up before.
It was a very weird situation.
What is it called? Reawakening or something? Kingdoms of
Amalur? Yeah, Re-Reckoning.
Re-Reckoning.
Let's see. Rhode Island, yeah.
Is it Rhode Island?
It's Rhode Island. I'm pretty sure because that's what comes up when you search. 38 Studios was the original developer, and they were founded in Rhode Island. Originally based in Massachusetts, the company moved to Rhode Island.
Oh.
And ended up being part of that, and it went bankrupt, and it gave all sorts of stuff. Kurt Schilling, that's what it is, gave $75 million. Rhode Island gave Kurt Schilling $75 million to make a game.
Yeah, it's always kind of shady from that end.
So it's not that it's impossible. State and government funds technically do make their way into things, but I feel like the way that China's doing it here, we don't know. There could be no ill intentions. I'm not really trying to put that on there. It's just China's disregard, and I know we just talked about this earlier in a kind of different sense, but China's complete disregard for copyright infringement always makes this kind of weird.
Well, and I think, too, that there's something to think about, is that if Tencent ended up having a majority stakes in the gaming world, especially for development, there's going to be this kind of developmental shift for people who don't even work with Tencent, because you have people making games and they have to be, Tencent certified, quote unquote, where if this has to pass with Tencent, and in order for it to pass with Tencent, it has to meet these guidelines. Well, you're going to have companies, especially smaller companies, who aren't working with Tencent, but would prefer their games to be that way because inevitably they feel like that's how it's going to become.
Oh, it's like you're trying to follow the curve of the gaming industry?
Yeah, restrictions of their development because of Tencent. And then because of that, it kind of curves around and creates this I don't know, just this kind of weird habitual, like, oh, well, we can't make the game this way because Tencent won't allow it. But we're not even published, or Tencent doesn't own anything in our company or anything like that. But they know eventually, if they want a sequel for the game, they have to go through Sony, they'll have to go through Tencent, and they'll have to do it anyways.
If it keeps happening that way. I mean, I guess that's a clearly
expectation.
I get you. That's
in-game thought.
Yeah, that's really far off. But technically, the possibility does exist, and that's pretty steep in the way that it looks. I mean, but I still think you'd have the thing of people who are just individual, singular people who go against that because they're just making games for their own reasons, and then you get games like Stardew that this guy made because he wanted to, and there was a small group of people that he was like, hey, was there any interest in this? And enough people said yeah that it was just kind of like, let's do it.
It's such a good game, too.
It's crazy, and then that game comes up to blow up and be good when it didn't have any outside pressure outside of just himself and the fans wanting it. But, It's fine. I think the Tencent thing is just something that it's much like Disney. I mean, as much as it is about the fact that it's a government that is known for censoring and is known for lack of copyright care, that's part of it. But it's also just because I don't like a singular thing owning anything, and which is kind of like the thing of for every company that Sony buys and Microsoft continue to buy, and a lot of this is going to start happening to where, or at least a lot of people view it this way, where moving forward, game companies as the system it's on starts to matter less, and it starts to become more that you can play games without a system, which does seem like it's the way things are going, that it's going to be more about what games you have under your platform, even if it's not on a system, even if it's not on a console. So Sony has more reason to want to buy people. Microsoft has more reason to want to buy studios so that they get IP that they can have at that point, and so they can also just have the development resources to keep doing this. I don't even like that. Like, I wouldn't even like a world where it's just Microsoft and Sony. That's not going to happen. Nintendo is stuck in there for a long time and are finally at success with Switch for the first time in a hot minute, to where it's
Since the Wii.
since it's real success that has high attach rate, because Wii was a success with a low attach rate,
Still a success, though.
but still
They
a
still
success.
made money.
And then of course, the DS was a huge success. The 3DS less or so, but they still made
Still a
money.
success.
So the point being is that Nintendo is hung in there and they're doing really well right now. And as long as Nintendo can stick around and go, even if it comes up to those three, I think it's better. But you always will have third-party publishers too, Ubisoft. But even when you think about that, you don't really let's go away from all that. Do you really want a world full of where every game is published by either EA or Ubisoft or Activision?
Yeah, it'd be lame.
I mean, we're in a world where a lot of games are, but we're also in a world where we get lucky, cool releases that everybody ends up loving. Like the Biomutant has the potential. Right now, a lot of people seem excited on it. Biomutant
Dead
come
Cells.
out. Yeah, Dead Cells became a huge
Enter
hit.
the Gungeon.
Greedfall actually did surprisingly well, and that's from Focus Home Interactive.
Slay the Spire. Honestly, that's why I was so excited to get a Switch again. Is because there are specific games, Hollow Knight, like they just excel on a handheld. And honestly, dang, now I had a thought there, and I don't for the community's take question. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, well, darn.
Like, it just crossed my mind as I was talking to him, and I was like, that'd be good community's take. Dang.
Was it in relation to handheld gaming?
No. Maybe it's what are people's favorite indie games in the past decade or something like that.
That's fine. We can do that.
But I can't. That's not exactly what it was. I remember it tomorrow.
I'd even at that point, I
too
think,
late.
what's your favorite game that's not a AAA game? That's the best way to kind of word it. And I think some people may not be completely aware of what isn't AAA, to be honest. That does happen.
Call of Duty is a AA game, isn't it?
Could you imagine a AA Call of Duty?
Call of Duty Mobile. It's not, but I mean,
Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified for the Vita.
that game was awful.
The game was not great. But I guess.
What about Call of Duty Cold War on the DS? Was it Call of Duty Cold War? It was a Call of Duty game on the DS. I can't remember what it was.
It wasn't Cold War. Modern Warfare was on the DS.
That might be what I'm thinking.
Dude, it was crazy. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like Halo on the DS, and that's also crazy.
Dude, it just makes you go, how? Like,
Yeah.
why did you even think this was a good idea? Like, I can look at Metroid Prime Hunters
And be like, yeah, that
and be
makes
like,
sense.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. The moment that you do, like, Call of Duty on there, I'm like,
Yeah, it's like, that's way too pixely. But, yeah. So,
Crazy
community's
times.
take question. What is your favorite non-AAA
Non-AAA
game? Or I'll say it this way. What is your favorite non-AAA discovery in the past couple of years to decade? Something that, again, that you just really enjoyed that you didn't think you would enjoy based off of your personality and your play history. But, yeah, you could always answer this question and get it on our community's take at our Discord in the link description below. Our Twitter, which is, of course, I've said earlier, Triangle SQRD over there. And then we'll post that on Friday. We'll post it on our Discord on Friday if you want to answer it in the YouTube comments, because nobody does that. Nobody probably will. So shoot your shot there if you want to. Or, of course, you can answer it on our Facebook group, Triangle Squared, a PlayStation Podcast. We thank Manscaped for believing in the small people like ourselves and giving us a sponsorship.
we thank you
And we thank
for
you
taking us up on that.
This is my end job. I've been great at it. Use discount code Triangle SQ. No, see, you messed me up. He messed me up. I was on a roll. Use discount code SQRD at manscaped.com to save you 20% and get your free shipping. And yeah, we also like to take a second to shout out our Patreons who
make everything we do here possible. It helps pay for stuff on the set, like these RGB lights we got to get fixed because they're not working and they're off, and they have been for 3 weeks now. I just forgot to say something. So we need new RGB lights. So we thank you guys over on patreon.com/Nartech for supporting us over there. Well, it looks like you have to plug them in.
That's the one I had to resolder, so I'm probably going to buy new ones.
Just buy new ones. And if you subscribe to us on patreon.com, .com/Nartech, not only do you support the show and you help buy stuff for our studio and stuff like that, but it helps us with our fees for all of our podcast services, as well as you are a $5 member for at least 3 months of our quarters. Then you will receive a PS1 custom case of your choosing, and there's a lot of those to choose from as well. But you get the coolest feature of being shout out at the end of every episode. Yep. So we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to episode 198. This is Saul. This is Brett. And
thank you guys for making this show happen.
Episode 199. Dang it.
You're good. Don't worry about it.
We'll see you guys back for hopefully a live stream of Bloodborne for episode 200.
We will let y'all know probably by midweek. So
Bloodborne and pizza and hanging out.
Yeah.
And maybe user calls if we can get it to work correctly.
Bloodborne, pizza, and chill?
Yes. Bloodborne, pizza, and chill.
Okay, we're going to do some work this week. But shout out to our patrons who make this show happen. Kyle Grimm, Josh Jarrell, Matthew Green. My name is Pan. My name is Dan. Love you, Dan. Luke Bartolomeo, Sean Santarud, Funk Turkey, Vanny Villalobos, Corey Hickerson, Blake Popst, Kevin Bacon Bits, Mark Schutz, Eric McAllister, Shadowist, Steven Salazar, The Stonard, Rich, Constantly Kenny, Solitary Red, Chris Figs, Zachary Sawyer, Landis, Rude Days 93, Brian, Donovan Williams, William Digital Spooker, Derek Porter, Josh Ayers, Joshua Lago, Sean One Neo, Tyler Powers, El Shabib, Jason Clendenning, and Richard Schaefer. Thank you guys so much. And if you want to become a patron, head over to patreon.com/Nartech. Thank you.